Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello, Dave here from toy-polloi. Today for Rareburg I'm going to show you how to reattach the head to an Eagle Eyes Action Man. A common problem you'll see when collecting vintage 1970s Eagle Eyes Action Man is that the heads have become detached. There is a piece of rubber, as you can see in the neck here, that holds the head in place, and this perishes over time and snaps and the head falls off. So today I'm going to show you how to reattach that head and get this Action Man back and ready for action. The first thing we need to do is remove the residue of the old elastic piece that's sort of stuck there in the head. So I'm just going to use a pair of sort of small cutters to gently nip this away. The plastic is fairly sort of easily destroyed, as you can see, like that. So I'm just going to cut this until I can take the whole of that piece out. It will take a little bit of fiddling, but should be possible. I might even have to use a pair of tweezers just to if I just grab that and just to sort of break it up a bit, and so that we can get to the peg that's in there that we need to attach some new elastic to. So here you can see the remnants of the sort of rubber that I've now removed from inside the neck cavity. If we look inside the neck cavity, you can clearly see that there's a peg across there that we need to attach a new piece of elastic to, and we can then use that to attach inside the head. So let's get the head ready for getting all of this joined back together. So here we have the head of the Eagle Eyes Action Man, and inside the head there is a cylinder that is clipped in place, and the original piece of elastic attached at the top of this cylinder there. So what we've got to do is to remove this, and just using a small screwdriver like this, small flathead screwdriver, you can push this in around the edge of it and gently sort of work your way around the neck, prising it out. Be careful of your hands, it's a little bit fiddly. And it will eventually, you can pop this whole section out. Takes a little bit of fiddling. And there we go. There you can see the pole and section that was inside the head. And on top of this is a small piece of plastic, and this is the remains of the top section of the rubber band that used to hold it into the neck. Now you'll need this, so keep this handy. To enable us to use this small piece of plastic to reattach the head, we need to modify it slightly by drilling a hole through the centre of it. So I'm just going to use my drill here to carefully drill a small hole in the centre of this disc. If you don't have this disc, because sometimes they are missing, you can use a washer or a small button. So here we have the sort of modified piece of plastic now with the hole in the centre. Now we get on to the tricky bit. Firstly, you'll need a piece of elastic. This you can pick up at most sort of haberdashery shops. It doesn't need to be particularly thick. Actually, the thinner the better, really. This is about sort of 2 millimeters across. And now you've got the very tricky part of you have to thread this behind this peg and pull it back out, so you have both ends coming out of the neck hole. You're going to need a pair of tweezers for this and a little bit of patience, as it does. It is a little bit on the tricky side, but it can be done. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we have it. So it is possible. It takes a little bit of practice, and it's ideal if you have some tweezers that are angled like this, because that makes the job a lot easier. Once you have the elastic through the body of the Action Man, you then need to thread it back through the neck cone. Now that you've got the elastic in place, you now need to thread it through the hole that we've drilled in the small circular piece of plastic. So this can be, again, be a little bit tricky because obviously the elastic is bigger than the hole, but it just takes a bit of patience. It's easy to get the first one through, and for the second I tend to use a pair of tweezers or something like that to sort of force it through, but it can be done. And there we go. So now you have everything in place and you can start to pull it all together. So what you need to do is pull the elastic really quite tight. Again, you can use the tweezers for this just to keep everything in place. And then once it's nice and tight, you need to tie a knot, keeping the elastic as taut as you possibly can. This is quite hard to do on camera, so I'm just going to quickly do this off camera, and you can see what the results look like then. And once it's all tied in a knot, you should end up with something like that. You'll need to tie a few little knots just to make something big enough just to hold in place, but that should be good enough to keep everything in check. You can then cut off the excess bits of elastic as you don't need these anymore, like so. And then it's just a case of simply reattaching the head. The head just pushes into place like so, and it will click once you've pushed it far enough. So let's do that. There we go, and now the head is back on, and that's your Action Man all back together. And so now you can see Action Man with his head reattached, and it all works properly. You can rotate it and pose it, and he's all back and ready for action. So I hope that's been of interest to you, and thanks for watching. Hello, Dave here from toy-polloi. Today for Rareburg.com I'm going to show you how to fix a couple of common problems with Hasbro G.I. Joe and Mego 3 3/4 inch action figures. If you collect toys from the 70s and 80s, a lot of them are constructed in the same way. Hasbro and Mego, and also figures from the 18 by Galoob, all constructed using a very similar technique, which was that the body was made out of plastic elements, and these were all held together with a small rubber band that fixed everything in place. And over time this rubber perishes and you'll find figures like this in pieces, and it's a very easy thing to fix. Another common problem with these old figures, again because they're made of multiple parts and screwed together, is that these screws used go rusty. So today I'm going to show you how to fix both of these problems. First up, let's look at the rusty screw that's in the back of this figure here. This is a Buck Rogers by Mego. The first thing we need to do is to unscrew this figure. It's just held together with one small screw, so you'll just need a small Phillips screwdriver and unscrew the back of it, and you can take the whole thing apart. And as you can see here, this screw is not the rustiest I've seen, but it's still got a fair amount of rust on it. So what we're going to first do is to clean this up. A very simple trick on this is you just need to drop it in vinegar. You can buy white vinegar from most supermarkets. I have a small amount here in a tub. All you need to do is place the screw in the vinegar and leave it for a couple of hours. After a couple of hours you'll be able to give it a wipe and all of the rust will come off. So the screw has been in this white vinegar now for a couple of hours. If I just remove it, I'm going to use a pair of tweezers just because it's such a small screw, and I'm going to give it a wipe on this cloth here, just a bit of kitchen towel. And if I now show you the end result, as you can see this screw looks as good as new. All of the rust has gone and it's back to being a nice sort of chrome finish. So that's the first part of this job. Let's move on to replacing the rubber band. So now that we have the screw all clean, we can go ahead and sort out replacing the rubber band that holds this figure together. As you can see here, there's a black piece of rubber which has perished and snapped, and this is what holds the whole figure together. So to replace this, what you're going to need is an O-ring. You can pick these up at most sort of hardware stores, DIY stores, or even online. I buy a whole bulk of them in different shapes and sizes for fixing figures. This one's about a 1.5 centimetre across, but you can use smaller ones if you only have a smaller one to hand. So what you need to do is attach this O-ring to the hook that goes between the two legs. So just push that in place. It's a little bit fiddly. All of this stuff is a little bit fiddly just because the figures are so small. And then once it's through the hook, you need to pass this through the pelvis area. Make sure the pelvis is around the correct way, pointing to the front, as you can see, just like that. And now for this next piece, you need, well, you could ideally have an extra pair of hands because it's just a little bit fiddly. As soon as you start to attach this together, it's all sort of under tension and tends to try and pull itself apart. So what you need to do is grab the black part of the O-ring and push it over the screw hole on the back of the figure's torso. So you hook it over like so, and once that's in place, now it's all sort of spring loaded. So you just have to try and sort of hold everything in place as best you can. It's a little bit of a fiddly job. So there's one arm in place. I can now put the other arm in place like so, and again just sort of have to hold it as best you can. Now the next thing I do is actually put the head into the front part of the torso and put these two bits on together, as that seems to be the easiest way to do it. So I've got the head there and the front of the torso, and you can then just sort of work this in place while everything else is sort of still spring loaded, just like so. And there we go, he's all together and he hasn't fallen apart. Now we can just put the screw in his back, like so, and just quickly screw it up. And there you have, there's the Buck Rogers figure back together, and as the rubber band is now nice and new, he stands up perfectly. All his limbs are quite nice and stiff and taut. And as I said before, you can use this trick on most figures from the sort of 70s and 80s that are built in this construction. So that's G.I. Joes, Micronauts, Black Hole figures, and even some of the A-Team Galoob figures from the 80s have exactly the same construction. Thanks for watching. Hello, Dave here from toy-polloi. Today for Rareburg.com I'm going to show you how to repair broken legs on He-Man Masters of the Universe figures. If you're a collector of vintage He-Man toys, a common problem that you'll come across is this, that the legs of a figure have fallen off. Now this happens because there's a rubber band that goes between the two legs, and this perishes over time and finally snaps and the legs just fall off. So today I'm going to show you how to reattach those legs. So first up, let's take a look at the bits of equipment that you'll need to fix this. So here's what we need to fix the legs. You need a couple of hooks. These can be purchased from most hardware stores or even eBay. I tend to buy those in bulk just because they're very useful to have. You'll need a couple of O-rings. These are about 1.5 centimeters across. You'll also need a couple of different size pairs of pliers, a small screwdriver, a pair of tweezers if you have them, you can use the pliers for this, and a piece of thread or string. So let's go ahead and we'll get the first part ready. First up, take one of the legs, and into this you've got to screw one of the hooks. You can screw into the sort of rubber area that's left when the old perished rubber has been removed. So just screw that in, going about halfway at the moment. Once that sort of feels pretty firm, it's quite easy to screw into. Put the two O-rings over the hook like that, and then using the pliers, squeeze that shut so that the rings can no longer be taken off the hook. And you'll end up with something like that. Then continue to screw in this hook until it's sort of firmly in place at the bottom of the indent at the top of the leg. Once you've got that ready, on the next leg, just screw the hook in sort of temporarily, sort of not fully down, but far enough down that you can still hook the O-rings back over the other side. Now we're ready to move on to the next step. Now, using the thread this through the two O-rings like so that you have a nice loop of string. I'll do that. So you can see there I've got a nice long piece of string. Now you need to thread this through the hole in the pelvis of, we have Hordak here. So get the two ends, and there is a small hole at the top of the pelvis. There's a larger hole at the bottom. That's not the one you've got to go to, it's the one at the top. So push the bits of thread through, and then this is where the tweezers come into effect. You can then use the tweezers to pull the cord like so, and there we go, it goes right through. And now you need to carefully, it's quite hard to do this, but it is possible, pull these two O-rings through the small opening at the top where the string goes through. So let's do this. It takes a little bit of practice, but it can be done. So there we go, that's now through. Now, using the screwdriver that you have to hand, you can quickly put that through the O-rings and just pull them fully out of the leg joint like that. That makes it nice and easy to access. Now we can get rid of the string. This is no longer needed. It's just for pushing the O-rings through the hole, so we can remove that. Now get the other leg where you've already placed the hook in place, and you can now hook this through the O-rings using the screwdriver as a lever. So again, a little bit fiddly to do, but it is possible. Like so. So now that leg is in place. At this point you now need to close the second hook. So again, get your pliers and carefully close that hook down so that that's all firmly held in place. Now you've got the two legs on, they're now a little bit floppy, so what you've got to do is the second leg now needs the hook screwing in fully into the socket like you did the first one. So using pliers, hold the hook, and you can then turn the leg and screw it in firmly. Again, it's a little bit fiddly to do, but it is all possible. And make sure that this gets screwed in as firmly as you possibly can. So here we have the legs reattached. If I just pull that leg apart, you can just about see the hook in the top of that leg there, but the legs are now firmly in place and Hordak can stand up again. There you go, nice simple fix to a common problem with vintage He-Man Masters of the Universe figures. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.